Okay, and we're back again. And today, my guest on the show is DVS, likes to be known as DVS or David Vincent Smith. And a very exciting bio. I read your bio, and that's pretty exciting. You've done a lot of exciting stuff, or that I would think would be exciting stuff to do. And I've just watched some of your work on at the museum as well. And some wonderful things. But before we get into that, COVID-19, what was that like? Like I tripped out. I think I was even getting into like conspiracy theories and is it all 5G and like what's going on? Because so the only access I had to any information was on the internet, which is full of shit most of the time. So I really flipped out a bit about COVID, especially coming from China because I'm working in China. And so it coming from China and then thinking, oh, God, are they lying or what's happened? But what was your experience of it, like when it first hit and what happened?
Well, it's pretty interesting because I work in the arts and I've got quite a diverse array of friends with quite diverse, perspectives on the world. So some people were very, sensible science and other people were like, it's the zombie apocalypse. Like, let's learn martial arts.
Well, it's one of those things that, no one was prepared for it at all. Like no one. I think some countries had things in place for a scenario like that, but no one was really prepared. Yeah. I know I wasn't prepared at all for some kind of global lockdown. It just seemed insane.
For me, it was probably a thing where if you hadn't gone through an existential crisis or sorted out your philosophies on life, it kind of forced you to do that.
Yeah.
I am generally quite I keep to myself because I enjoy reading and music and sitting in my room and I'm a writer by day. So really, the first few weeks I didn't really notice anything change, even though lockdown had happened. And then I'd occasionally I've got to go outside and restock the fridge and go, oh shit, there's a pandemic going on.
Yeah, something's going on out there.
But it didn't really kind of affect the way I lived my life. Obviously, I didn't socialize as much as I did, but I had a pretty strict routine about how I sort of live my day-to-day life, which is kind of a lot to do with me by myself. So I felt like I was pretty prepared. In terms of film, the things that kind of did change dramatically is I tutor filmmaking at a number of film schools and trying to teach film directing and screenwriting via video. It's just the worst, especially young people who are like having existential crises and anxiety, and you sort of going, am I a tutor of filmmaking or am I a counselor, a therapist?
Bit of both.
But actually, being located in WA was kind of like the isolation became the superpower, and all of a sudden my workload actually started to go up kind of a lot because I'm kind of a filmmaker as a result of being in Perth. I've done a lot of cinematography and shooting. I've done heaps of editing, and often on the smaller jobs, I shoot and cut as well as direct. So having that ability to do those three things meant that on smaller jobs, I could just crew up and mic something. So a lot of companies needed to quickly change their advertising or inform people what was happening with their companies, and they needed to quickly get stuff on their social media. So I was able to go out and make those videos by myself that they could use to sort of educate the public.
Yeah, now I remember, so we had a bit of a chat last night before, we organised this today, and we were talking about the idea of editing, and, I was saying that I kind of feel like it's an undervalued position, and you were saying it's like one of those, it's like you say, it's almost like a superpower as well, that editing is one of those things that if you kind of learn more about making films from editing than a lot of other things that you may think that you learn a lot about making film from.
Oh, yeah. How do I even begin? I could do the whole podcast on this. There's probably two things I could talk about. One is the elasticity of time on set. So film time on set changes with experience and understanding of what happens. So you can go on a film shoot and it can feel like I've got no time and this is totally insane to do a really simple scene.
Yeah.
But once you sort of start to understand what you're putting together and what you actually need, things kind of slow down. You can actually start to take control of the story and the way it's being directed. And I think I was really fortunate that I just cut kind of everything I made until I started having an opportunity to get other people involved. And what happened was I'd make something, I'd get in the edit. Of course, things didn't work. My mistakes were rubbed in my face. Not only that, I then had to either configure the story to make the plot work, or if it's just a corporate video, oh shit, this overlay is not long enough. Now I need to work out how to make it go longer. Okay, I'll duplicate the shot, reverse the second shot, so now it goes twice as long, and just all the little random tricks that you learn. But what ends up happening is you start to understand the grammar of story, so that when you go on to direct, you're never putting the camera in places that are a waste of time, because what ends up happening is if a camera setup is time being spent that you're not working on performance and hitting record. So if you know what you need, then you can sit longer in the moment, really developing those moments. And often, because I tutor, I've spent a lot of time watching students just hosing down scenes and just spraying them with camera coverage, and I'm just sitting there going, you're not going to use half these shots, and now your lighting is dropped by 20%, the performance is dropped by 20%, and all these little things stack up. So for me, editing is just a way to, it transforms the way you write, because you don't write stuff or you can write stuff to be able to be filmed better, to give the filmmakers a better chance. It changes the way you direct, because you can recognize actually all that stuff is just a moment. That's a look. I don't need to do all that sort of stuff. It kind of just goes on forever. And also it actually means that you can start to take control of your story as a filmmaker, because otherwise, if you're just sitting there hosing down coverage, the editor's probably going to end up actually being the author of the story and actually finding the vision anyway, you know?
Yeah. If you're providing too much, you're really handing it over to the editor, aren't you? Because I guess this is they talk about it with narratives, they talk about it with music, they talk about it, with filmmaking and acting and everything. But it comes down to choices, right? I mean, it does really. Choices are important, and you have to go. I'm going to make the choice. That's what I'm going to shoot. That and that. Enough's enough,
Filmmaking is decision making. I sort of say to students, directing is you got to cross the road, and there's a whole bunch of choices you got to make. And coming this way and this way, just all these trains, they're going to just smash you to pieces. And you've just got to try and kind of make all these choices to get to the other side. And you've got to really commit to your choices. And I think the more obviously educated you are, the better choices you make. But you can also, if things go wrong, then you open up a different set of choices. So then what is the best choice? And I think it's like, if you think about surgery, you're usually going to employ the experienced person, because they've made a whole bunch of choices around which artery to cut. So you kind of want to get the person who's more likely than not going to cut the right one. Or your picks,
Yeah, with that idea of choices and having to make them, and the idea of like knowing, having that knowledge. I guess what I think you're saying is that what I want to ask actually is, are these things that you've discovered? I mean, have you discovered things in the editing process that you would otherwise have not come up with? Like you were saying before, like learning to reverse shots and to fill things out where you didn't have enough footage. But has editing taught you things? Like you've just gone, wow, I can, you've kind of, it's enhanced your playbook, I guess, of the options that you have just from editing and learning through the editing process of techniques that you've had to discover.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's probably more than anything taught me what I don't need, really.
Yeah, right.
And taught me what the camera can actually do when you put certain shots together, and how communication works. You know, sitting with different edits and showing it to people, and then modifying the edit and seeing if someone goes, "Oh, I can understand what this means now."
Yeah.
You start to learn the language of cinema in a way that's kind of different, because you're actually sitting with different versions of the same story. So if I show
Yeah.
someone one version of the scene and then I take a line away, or I change the order of shots, it changes the person's experience. So you start to learn about how people read the language of images, right?
Yeah.
So because I've cut all my shorts, I've had to go through that repeatedly. Oh, we didn't get that. Or what about this part? And so you start to learn about how people read cinema, but also as you're trying to develop your own style as a filmmaker, you start to learn about, okay, I'm trying to explore this thing. It works when I try this, but it doesn't when I try that. And you start to kind of learn your own language, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
you
it
develop
does.
your own language with the audience. And that's kind of what I've been doing since I started, is what does a David film look like and sound like, and trying to develop that voice, because I think that's the most sort of important part of it all.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea, the idea of language and film language, and like you say, being understood, you know, by the people viewing what you're creating. And going back to the editing thing, is that where you learnt your language, like your film language? Do you think the most?
No.
No. Okay.
I didn't even. Oh, I guess so to a certain extent, but probably a case of experimentation of writing, shooting, and editing, and all sort of combined.
Yeah.
But I didn't really. The concept of being a filmmaker didn't occur to me till I was sort of 19, 20. It didn't even occur to me that was a job you could kind of go for. So I was very much more interested in writing and reading.
Yeah.
And then and I kind of thought movies were for people who were too lazy to read books, to be honest, growing up, because I was a real bookworm, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
And I love storytelling.
Yeah.
But then what I learnt once I first made a short film was I realized, hang on a minute, this is storytelling, that the words have been replaced with images. And now I think probably something that's consistent with my work is there's a huge reduction of dialogue in most of my films. And I'm always trying to cut dialogue down. My favorite filmmaker is Charlie Chaplin, you know. And for me, I'm looking for how are we universally communicating through images. And so I've become obsessed with the idea of allowing actors through what they're doing and how they use their body and what is it they actually are trying to do. So because it's kind of went full circle from writing to almost going, actually, it's the same. It's all storytelling. This is just a new language. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting too. And that like you say, you're a bookworm. And, you know, I remember as a kid growing up and that, you know, you would go and see a movie and you would talk to your friends about the movie and everyone would go, wasn't as good as the book. It wasn't as good as the book. And I think, you know, part of that is that in the book, you get people's thoughts. You know, the writer can say he thought and take you into the character and really develop the character. And with a visual sense of creating characters is a lot different. It's a much different language.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So can you tell us a bit about that? About
absolutely
character.
Well, something I'm actually I've been exploring kind of in the last few years. This concept of how do we make it an experiential thing beyond the physical goals and internal goals, but how do we sort of make it this kind of subconscious experience? I was thinking about movies, and sometimes you'll just watch a movie and there'll be an image and a bit of sound and something rather, and you'll feel it in a kind of a strange way. It just seems, you know what I mean? Kind of, there's this kind of religious experience that happens, which is you can't script that. And so Paul Schrader's written about that in a book about transcendental cinema.
Okay.
It's kind of like, you know, a taxi driver, he's just driving around and you're kind of in the rain. And I remember being in high school watching like 10 minutes of that on SBS, and I was like, I don't know why I'm so captivated by this guy just driving around.
Yeah.
What the hell is that?
Yeah.
You know?
How
And
does that
so
happen?
how does that work? And so the feature I'm writing at the moment, I'm trying to just look at, yes, we understand what the character's doing with their objectives and their goals through physically what they're doing, and then they obviously have this arc with how they grow as a person, what they couldn't do at the start of the film.
Yeah.
But what are the moments where we just get a window inside their brain?
Yeah.
So I've just been trying to write a couple of scenes that, like, there's a scene I just wrote where she's been going through all this trauma and drama, and she just sits down at the kitchen bench at night. She hasn't slept for 2 days. She's failing at this really difficult task, and she just looks over to the living room, and you see this red light coming on her face, and then it's just strobe lighting, and she just sees herself dancing like insane, and she's suppressed, this version of herself, which is where she's free in expression. It makes no sense in the context of what she wants to do, but I'm trying to kind of take that part that lives inside that person when you're walking around or in the shower and create that as an image. And this could go straight to the edit and be cut as absolute nonsense, but I'm really curious to just try a few things like that, because for me, in terms of learning, I'm always interested in experimenting. Get the film right, and then inside just slip a few moments
and have them there. Have them there ready to go. And test them out, and see how they go. I really like that idea of people are so complex, and that idea of someone going through like when you're under stress, the walls narrow and your vision narrows, and you do shut down parts of who you are. When you do that,
absolutely,
and remembering those parts of who you are, I think sometimes it can be the key out of the stressful situation. So I'm with you on that idea. It's a great idea. I think I know the feature that you're talking about, but I don't think we can't talk too much about it, right?
Oh, we can talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is it? Can we talk about the storyline?
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. Totally. So it's the one where the sister. Yeah.
Correct.
Kidnaps or takes.
Basically.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. Siblings.
Manipulate.
Kind of. But the purpose of it is to get the sibling off a habitual drug, and I was fascinated by the short of it that I saw that. And I think it's a great idea, and I think it explores a lot of things, because there's so much tension in that. You've got the relationship, that's obviously been a long relationship, from their lives. They've known each other for their whole lives. And then one of them choosing a very extreme measure, but out of a desire for the other person. And perhaps, self-enlightened, positivity for themselves as well. I think the outcomes for the sibling, who's helping the other sibling, are just as great, because they don't have to worry. It's kind of like you got to their wits' end. But in that respect, I think it's a really, really complex storyline, and because of that, I think it makes it it's going to be a wonderfully interesting film, I think.
It's been a wild journey making that film. I mean, the question is really, how far would you go to save someone you love? When you're boxed into a corner and you see no other way out. Desperate people go to desperate measures, and the nutshell of the story is a sister kidnaps her brother to enforce detox, to free herself and each other from their toxic bond. And of course, what happens is you think that you're kind of helping this person with problems, but of course, anytime you're confronted or enter that moment, the mirror is put on yourself, and you're forced to confront yourself and realize maybe you're not as perfect person either. So it's quite a complex kind of character drama. And as I was saying to you yesterday, it's born out of a real. I can tell you where the story came from. If you like, hear it.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's get into it. I'm all for it. Before you do, just that when people like, explore these boundaries and get into, like the person who's actually made that decision. Right, I'm actually, because you need to plan to do something like that. I mean, sometimes you might be in a position where you're just able to lock someone up in some kind of way, but normally there would be a bit of planning that went into it. But also that character must be going through the thoughts of, who the hell am I? To be, what am I doing in that narrative as well? And I'm really fascinated by that idea that whilst that what you're doing is good, is for good, for a good outcome, but also, you're
kidnapping someone.
Yeah, and you're doing something pretty bad, and the other person's going to suffer. So yeah, it's pretty. I like it because it just has so many levels of really intense emotional things on offer, for the audience.
Yeah. And I'm trying to, there are films where people kidnap people to rape and murder them, and I'm not interested in making films like that unless there's strong political reasons. So I'm really making the inverse of that. It's the kidnapping film with love.
Yeah.
But it's still sitting in that shape of that tension. But yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is really, okay, this person's doing something that's really extreme. So what I'm sort of trying to articulate is, what happens? How does a person get to that point? Where that to them seems like that is the next step. Or that's the step in their mind that makes sense. And the person's got to be pretty desperate. And have tried a lot of other things and probably at their wits' end and potentially quite damage themselves to kind of go, well, this is the solution.
There's no other way.
So I can tell you the moment that I came to that point in my life.
Let's get into it.
So, to cut a long story short, my little brother, it's based on me and his relationship, and he had a really sort of quite a few hardships in his life, and he got into drugs when he was quite young, and he lived on the streets, and this is someone I changed nappies for and things like that. So obviously we're very close, and it was a really weird. It had a kind of a big impact on my filmmaking career because my career was sort of going really well, and parallel to that, his life was falling apart. And I was walking into a screen funding body to meetings about movies, while there he is on the streets out the front. And it was that kind of crazy, that thing of going, it was really hard to just sort of, it felt bad sort of doing the, you know what I mean? It was a really weird sort of thing to wrap my head around. Anyway, his life progressively got worse, and, as he kind of got into the full, throes of meth addiction, basically. And then he became quite a violent and dangerous individual. And after many years of dealing with that, and to the point where I didn't feel comfortable like I could go overseas. I didn't feel comfortable I could do 2 long film jobs because I needed to have flexible to I'd run and leave off film sets and make up excuses. I'm just stepping off set. That producers had no idea that I might not be coming back because I'm about to be in a fight, that kind of thing. And after years and years of that, and obviously seeing the effects that it had on my parents, I sort of said, look, this is gonna end bad. We're lucky it hasn't ended bad already. But there is only one outcome, and this is how you see on the front page of a newspaper some sort of serious issues, something's happened, someone's found me. So I was on a film shoot. This is what happened. I was on a film shoot. I was really tired. I was driving home. My mum called me up for the millionth time. And my brother was there, and things weren't great, and I needed to get there ASAP to try and help resolve what was happening. Without going into too much detail, I was just at the end of my tether, and then I was like, I've got to fix this. I've just got to resolve this. And right then and there, I was in the freeway, and I just thought, I'm gonna freaking kidnap this guy, and I'm gonna. But my plan wasn't what happens in the movie. My plan was, I'm gonna take him out for dinner, coax him with food, and then I'm going to drive out to like I'm just going to drive out of the city, and I'm going to put heaps of food and like water in the car, and I'm just going to like throw the keys away, and I'm going to give a spare key to a friend and tell them the address to come in a week's time. Which is wild. And after that pretty 20 minutes of driving to my parents' house, I was like so committed to doing that. I was like, I'm going to fucking do this. And then, you know, my brother ended up getting actually arrested and he's locked away. But of course, the filmmaker in me was like, well, that's a hell of an idea for a movie.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
And so that's the origin of it. So it's very personal. Very personal.
Yeah, I noticed in that story too, there's, it's like one of those big words that university students like to throw around, and that's juxtaposition. You know, people love to throw that word around. But that story does contain so much of that, of you doing so well and the other side of it, you know. It's not too dissimilar to my family setup. My brother's, he was a very, very, very good surgeon in Melbourne. You know, I think he was the surgeon for the MotoGP.
Wow.
Yeah, they would call him. I mean, he was pretty much number one there in Melbourne, and he was director of surgical services and did lots of things like that. And I was not. You know, I was a wild boy riding motorcycles around the place and being pretty wild and. Yeah, so I kind of get that juxtaposition of it's almost like living in two different societies. You know, even though it's in the same location. You know, the people that my brother would have been rubbing shoulders with, and the people that, my brother wasn't in the pub seeing live bands. You know, I was in the pub seeing live bands. Yet we're in the same city. You know, we're in the same city, and he's got a very good medical career happening, and. So I understand it, but also I think it's a really fascinating thing to look at is that, these simultaneous stories that can be in the same family, happening at the same time. And I think there's a lot there to unpack. And
the other thing that I'm really interested in is masks and the way in which people wear masks in order to survive. So really she's functioning, the sister who's basically me, from real life, is basically putting on this mask and never really admitting in the feature, her friends and the other people. Yeah. And like there are parts where she's at a party with her friends and on her phone she's got this app that is like there's a baby monitor set up in the room so she can see her brother. How you going? Yeah, it's good. She's kidnapped her. Yeah. And she just had a mental breakdown and she can't even admit that. And I think, it took me such a long time to sort of really talk to people about the reality of what was happening in my life. And, I walk out and like, people had no idea that like what had happened that morning. And that sort of coping mechanism is an interesting thing that human beings adapt. But of course, in terms of storytelling, it's the part where the purpose of a story is we smash that person's face and that mask must be removed often. They must confront what it is they can no longer confront in order to save the movie. And so what was weird about making this film, of course, was part of the process of writing the script was I must confront the parts of myself that I hunted. Yeah. So my script editor would always kind of be like, I have an amazing script editor, Vincent McCarthy. She was a script editor for the Nightingale and Relic. And she would kind of be like, so this part here where the person kind of does this thing, why don't they just say this? Why don't they just ask them this? And I was using very clever metaphorical directing to dance around. Just the reason why they didn't do the thing is because I didn't want to say that. Yeah. Or I didn't want to confront that. Yeah. And so she, gave me these exercises where she gave me these questions to answer about the characters, these backstory questions. And I thought I was going to do all this script work with her. And she'd just be like, all right, here's the following questions. I want you to write these down and answer them. Write it out by hand. Just don't overthink it. Yeah. And then I'll catch you later. And she'd just leave. And I'd sit there and I'd be like, oh my God, I don't want to write this stuff. And I was like, well, I got to do it. Yeah. Because it's I either do this or I'm stationary as a human being and stationary as an artist. And it was a wild experience.
Yeah, it's really interesting, that idea of masks too, because, I know I'm a different person in in different social groups.
Totally.
I know myself that I'm not, and I think some of my social groups, if they ever met each other, would say, are we talking about the same guy? If they were saying and talking to each other about me, they'd be saying, really, he's like
I
that?
think that'd be pretty common, I think people
Yeah.
have this adaptability, this survival sort of mechanism.
Yeah, but also, I guess what I'm getting at is that the idea of those masks, that it's like you feel you have to be, or maybe you attract yourself to different social groups to go with different parts of your persona that are real and
Totally.
legitimate, but one group are probably not going to accept it, and another group, is more likely to accept it. So you go with that group, and you can explore that part of yourself with them, and then with the other group, you get to be that person, But I just find it really interesting that the idea of masks, and that sometimes it's not out of a willingness to be false. Sometimes it's a willingness or a necessity, or it's enlightened self-interest, where I actually just like being with these people, and I know those people don't like being with those kind of people.
That's true.
Yeah, like for me, ride motorcycles, and I hang around with people who love bikes, and the bike scene is its own thing, and it attracts certain types of people who get right into that. But those people aren't really going to mix with the theatre people,
Yeah.
It's so much. I mean, some of them will, some of them won't, and then the theatre people and the bike people are probably not going to want to muck or hang out with the teachers,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, I mean, you kind of are different people for different situations, but I find that exploring that and exploring the intricacies of that is a really, really fascinating place to go.
I think that's actually kind of a recurring theme in a lot of my movies, actually.
Yeah.
Is about that idea of how we present ourselves, and and also I'm really interested in like the goals and aspirations and dreams of people that we don't normally interact with. I made a film about 6, 7 years ago called Rat Tail, and it was about a bunch of just the classic short film of the kids who are all like drop out smoking cigarettes, and hanging out and just talking shit, drinking wine out of a goon bag. But I really wanted to make it about these people who had legitimate dreams and goals, because I grew up with people like that, and it wasn't all just shit talking. People really wanted to make it as a musician, or really wanted to do these things. Some of them didn't have the structures in place that would enable them to facilitate that. But I really wanted to showcase that, the way people look and behave is not necessarily a reflection of who they are and what they want in life. And so I'm really interested in sort of showcasing that often what is common with human beings is that we all want a loving family, or we all want to achieve certain things, but that looks different to different people, and not everyone looks the same.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the idea of social behavior versus the idea of personal desires. And like you say, just because you behave a certain way doesn't mean, and it also doesn't make it impossible for you to do those things and have those desires fulfilled. I think it seems to be that, this has been a kind of a recurring theme in the podcast, but we often talk about luck. People say, "Oh, you're so lucky," and it's the 20 years of hard work that preceded that luck. It's like, oh, I got a lucky break. And I think even people tell themselves, oh, I got a lucky break, but really you worked hard, and and if you had a plan, like I have a story like this where I was at uni. I'd had a fight with the education department, and I was digging myself into this big hole, of debt, of like educational owing money and just life, just living life and going, shit, I just don't have enough money. And so I thought, well, how can I get money, And I thought, well, you could go to the mines. And then I don't know if you've ever tried to get a job on the mines, man. It's a pretty tricky thing to do. So I just basically got on my bike and rode up to Newman because I knew there were mines up there, and and I worked in I'd been working in a hospital, and I worked in a hospital, but I had a plan, right? So my plan, and I had a goal, and what happened is that, just by talking to people and finding out ways and listening to people's advice, I ended up working on the mines. So what happened was I saved up, got a truck driving license, and then the best advice I ever got was, why don't you drive the bus? Because there's buses that take the workers out to the mines every day. You drive that bus, you get to know the people who work on the mines, and if something comes up, maybe you've got all the licenses and you're ready to go. And that was the best advice. Turned out to be the best advice, and that's how I did it. But as a story or an analogy for people in film and having desires and wanting to achieve things, I think there's a lot of key elements in that, which to me, even like I was quite old when I did that. I was about 40. And, for whatever reasons, I hadn't had a lot of older people inputting into my life, positively. So I didn't really know those ideas, which sound simple to a lot of people, but those ideas of, and I think this is getting back to when you're saying like people with their desires and their behaviors, that your desires lead you have these ideas, but if you don't have people who get in the ring with you, it makes it so much harder. And also maybe you do have people who get in the ring with you and you don't listen to them. It's like these were kind of the couple of things that I learnt, was that like listening to that guy who said, why don't you drive buses? It seemed a very side and not really related issue, was the best advice that I got, and totally. I listened to him. But also the idea of having that plan and that goal and setting things in place, like even if it's just moving towards it in whatever capacity. Like I said, I just got on my bike and I rode to Newman, and I had a friend there.
But that's a plan.
Yeah. I mean, it's a plan, but it's like, I don't know how it was going to end, but I went to where it was happening. I had to go.
Direction. That's all it is. That's actually all filmmaking is. I mean, what you're talking about is not that dissimilar to my film career. So I got to filmmaking late. I was fascinated by storytelling. It never really occurred to me. I didn't know anyone who did filmmaking. Never had met anyone. And so I was studying other things that I thought might lead to some kind of job to finance my desire to write novels.
Yeah.
Which is quite, and then I just was a terrible student throughout my whole life. I would just read books under the desk at school, and then the teachers just sort of stopped harassing me because they knew I didn't care. And then at uni, I was always failing. And then I hadn't found what I wanted to do. All I wanted to do was make stories. But of course, how the hell does that work in life? Because I hadn't seen or met anyone like that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a job, And so anyway, I was trying to work out what to do, and then I just saw an ad for a film course at TAFE in the Express magazine.
Yeah, wow.
I just literally went and did it. And then there's a whole bunch of interesting stuff happened with that, but I met a bunch of people when I fell in love with filmmaking. But to sort of fast forward a little bit, once I graduated film school, actually I kind of failed film school, but that's a different story. I was working in a bar in Northbridge, and and then a year goes by, then another year goes by, and I'm just thinking,
I know what that's like.
How the hell? Let's just have an honest conversation of, you want to be a film director. Okay, first of all, how do you get there? Like, you got to, instead of just being on this mouse wheel, what are the steps, even if they're small, what are forward steps I can use to climb up the ladder? And I was looking at other filmmakers around me that Facebook had started to come out, and Vimeo and YouTube, and there were people like Ben and Ant, and to me, I felt like I was 10 years behind them, because there were people who'd grown up wanting to be filmmakers, and I just felt like I've got a 10 or 15 year gap I've got to even close, which right now I think is completely irrelevant, because you don't need to look and compare yourself to people anyway, because what they want to do is totally different to me anyway. But at the time, I felt that pressure.
Yeah.
So I started to think about, okay, how do I make this thing happen. You want to be a film director. You're in a bar. This is insane.
Yeah.
And it's like, so like the best thing I can do is probably make short films at this point and practice. And I just have to get good. I have to get undeniably good.
Yeah.
What does getting undeniably good look like? Well, when you go to the gym every single day and bust your guts, that's how you get a six pack.
Yeah.
There is no other way that it happens.
Yeah.
And so how do you get undeniably good? Well, I've just got to start making stuff and start sucking. And when I was at film school, me and my friends made a small thing. We won this competition and we won a camera, and we just went out, and I went out every week and just made shit all the time without it wasn't for anyone often, and it was just religiously practicing filmmaking. Shoot, edit. And then I did that for a few years, and then I was still at the bar, and I was starting to get the odd job, but it was like, 3 or 6 months between each job. And I was like, damn, man, I could get really good in Perth, but still getting good in Perth doesn't mean much, because you need to be good in the world to actually survive as a film director. So then I started thinking, how the hell do I even get that? Because you think about the Olympics, right? Filmmaking is like the Olympics. You can't just get into the Olympics because there's all the heats, right?
Yeah.
Just to get into the final race. And even if you get into the final race, you have to actually get on the podium and get a medal to even be in the game. Yeah. So that's really that's film directing. So I was thinking, how the hell am I going to get into the final race and get a gold medal? What are the steps I need to do to educate myself? So I literally Googled best film directing tutor in the world and started to do this research. And then I sort of discovered Judith Weston. And then I just emailed, the small sort of film place that she worked out of in LA. Yeah. And I had never been to America, never been anywhere, basically, just some Perth kid. And I got into this class, and there was 9 students. 3 of them had won like best commercial at Cannes. Whoa. The other person in my class, I was the youngest person in the class. This other woman was the editor at Universal Studios and cut all of Will Ferrell's films. The other guy was the DP from Parks and Rec and was like a huge DP. And they're all people who are thinking about transitioning into directing, or successful directors topping up their skills. And I was just like, oh my God. I'm from TAFE and Perth, and work bar in Northbridge. But then I was like, okay, that's good. This is where you need to be.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Get the opportunity. Shit out of you. And of course, we didn't do any directing in the class. We had to act. She made us act, and it was all about understanding how to communicate with us. And she directed us, and that was a really sort of changed my outlook. And then I came back to Perth, and I was like, right, here we go. Yeah. I'm going to commit to this. No backup plan, and just started writing and reading, practicing. And it still took so long.
Yeah.
And every time I was on a job, I'm like, oh my God, what is this? But what I realized as I look back, I'm like, actually, they're all these stepping stones to the right place. And every time I wrote a movie, I was like, this is going to be the future film I'm going to make, and it's going to be awesome. Thank God it wasn't, because that was just practice for the next film. And I think, the reality is that people sometimes have seen that I've won a lot of film grants, and they probably think, I'm really lucky. What they don't see is the amount of film grants that I lost.
Yeah. Oh, and
over and over and over again.
The years of effort too. I think you've got to throw that in there.
I gave up, like I gave up a lot of my 20s there was a lot of socializing I would have loved to have done that I didn't do, because I was invested in trying to become a film director. And I just sort of looked in the mirror and I was like, this is an insane dream. This is totally insane. You don't become a surgeon overnight. You've got to work out where the blood is in the hospital first, and all these little things. And as you get better and better, because I say to my students now, I'm like, if I got you a job in Hollywood on $100 million film, you probably wouldn't know what to do, because you haven't done all the things. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't know how to do it effectively.
I think they'd probably be frightened. I think if someone said to me, "Oh, you be the director on this $100 million film," I'd be like, "I'll give it a go," but I'd be frightened. I'd be like, God, I think I'm gonna blow you $100 million here. Like,
Can I work with all these moving parts so I understand what everyone's
yeah,
doing and how
yeah,
to help them do their job and actually talk to them?
yeah,
And that you can't learn that overnight. I mean, you can obviously it happens to people when they learn, but I feel really fortunate that I've been on this journey of self-education and just working like not as a director, but working as an editing assistant,
yeah,
working as a camera assistant for other people's
yeah,
projects. I was editing. I did some assembly editing for Rams, which is out of the cinemas now. And how awesome is it that I get to sit with the rushes of Sam Neill and watch
yeah.
what's happening
Mm,
outside of the movie? What are the choices that director made? What are the choices that actor made? And all those opportunities are, like you say, leading to that moment. So that I guess going full circle back to COVID, one moment that just happened recently, which has been really amazing, was the Western Australia just built their brand new museum, and it's
yeah,
this huge piece of artistic infrastructure, $400 million building. It's world class, thing. And COVID happened, and they were going to have this huge festival outside, and then of course couldn't happen. So they were like, so they've got these lines that snake out the front of the building. And they still wanted to pump that money into the artistic community. So they decided that Perth Festival, who sort of programs all the arts, the big festival, they said, let's make film versions of the artists we were going to get, the orchestras, the dancers, etc. And I managed to get a directing gig for that, which is like incredible, going into the museum and making the first art inside this building. And that's how that job happens. I just was making random clips and things and putting out there.
yeah,
Eventually, people liked what I was doing, and now I feel like, well, I got to do this amazing thing, and that was Corona. It was the practicing of all the shitty music videos,
yeah,
of knowing that don't put the camera there,
yeah,
and all that sort of stuff. And it was
yeah,
just the perfect combination. But then I felt like we did a really good job with those videos, but only because of all the shit
yeah.
before.
Before,
So it's not key, it's a combination of the
yeah,
of the
yeah.
part.
I liked one of the things you said before, and I relate to that story, like with like my story about going to work on the mines, but no backup plan. I think that's kind of important. I think it's no plan B.
Yeah.
If you're gonna go for it, you've got to just I'm doing it. I think if you do that, it's like you are denying yourself the option to fail. You kind of gotta, you
Totally.
can fail on that journey, but you're on that journey and you're so dedicated to it that you have not given yourself the backup plan. The like,
Or if it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. I mean, for me, it was kind of going, at least give it a shot,
yeah,
because I think the worst thing would have been, if I had never tried properly, had
yeah,
sort of half tried, because
oh,
you can't
definitely,
half try with these things. There's too many people just grinding every day who just will lap you. So it was kind of like, if you spend a few years and you really give it all and it doesn't pan out and you end up doing something else with your life, I think you'll be at peace knowing that you did really give
you
it a
had to
go.
go.
I
Yeah,
think it's when you're only kind of, I sort of gave it a go. You'd be sitting there wondering what would happen if I really given it a go. So whether or not you actually make it, I think is irrelevant. I think it's that satisfaction of knowing that, there was a point in my life where I was committed to this art form I was in love with.
yeah. Yeah, and on that too, because you're saying it was sort of a later, what you call later in life uh, decision. Like, and you were saying that you felt like ants, and some of those guys were like, just streets ahead of you. And yet,
Yeah.
like when I was talking to Ants about his decisions and that, he's like, I didn't know what I was doing. You're like, I didn't know where I was going, and very very similar to your story about not, and I think it just seems to be a thing when you're younger. That's kind of your life. I have a belief, and I don't know whether it's just a thing that I believe in, and people can tell me it's stupid or whatever, but I don't think people should go to uni until they're like 23 or maybe possibly even older, and just like that there should be a cutoff from school, and then you go and do something and get out in the
Travel.
world. Yeah, or travel the world if you can afford it. But go work and pay your bills and learn about life, and then go to
Yeah.
university and learn some stuff before you do it, and get some life experience. Because I think that kind of thing, I don't know. I've got this feeling that if you go to school and then you go to university straight after school, you're part of institutions, and you just, you give the first quarter of your life, if you make it to 100, is all institutionalized,
Yeah.
and I don't think that sets you up in a good mindset.
Well, I can talk to you a lot about that because I work at 3 film schools, and it's a lot harder for people to make stories about life if they haven't experienced it.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
man, and you haven't. How do you write a film about someone's marriage breaking down if you haven't even had a girlfriend? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I'm it's that thing where often inexperienced filmmakers and certainly young people who haven't had a lot of life experience and had quite a sort of comfortable upbringing, their filmmaking becomes an exercise in imitation. So they
yeah,
start making what they think that kind of character's life looks like and
yeah,
resembles. But it's very inauthentic because they're basically kind of doing an emulation of maybe what they saw in a movie, but not what actually happens
yeah, yeah.
deeper in truth of that version. And so, yeah, I mean, it's certainly, I just floated around university having no idea what was going on. And I think now participating in life and meeting new people, I'm kind of at that point where I'm just like, bow down and be a humble servant to the educational experience of the universe, not
Yeah.
necessarily at a university, but interpersonal
Life, yeah,
relationships
of
and new
life, yeah.
relationships.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
an interesting thing, and I'm glad you brought up that word, or like well, you said inauthentic. But yesterday we touched on it briefly, that idea of authenticity, and it seems to be a recurring thing. I think, I don't know. I'm almost to the point where I think it's a life thing, that regardless of what you do, you need to be authentic about it. I think
Absolutely.
people hate bullshit, but nowhere more does it show up than on the screen or in a play or on the stage, or something
100%.
written or whatever. Like you're saying, that idea of wanting to imitate, and I think they say that imitation is like the sincerest form of flattery, because you have a desire and you see someone doing something good and you want to do something good, and so maybe that's the thing that you understand, so that you go with that because you don't really have anything else to go with. But you're denying yourself that authenticity. And I think it's only the brave who don't go to the point of imitation and go straight past imitation into, I'm just going to go with what I know and this is me, and
Totally.
yeah, I think it's a really courageous thing to be authentic, especially for younger students, I think,
Oh yeah.
to touch
I
on.
mean, I've always, if students are sharing their parts of their lives first, I mean, I always make sure I thank them first before, even talking about what the content is in terms of filmmaking. It's important to acknowledge,
Yeah.
you know, that's a big thing to bring your life experience to the
Oh,
table. And certainly if
absolutely.
someone's younger, it's a huge part of their life because they haven't lived a lot of life.
Yeah.
But in terms of being authentic, I mean, there's 2 things I'll say about that. One, as a filmmaker, and specifically in the world of directing, it's what sets you apart.
Mm.
Because lots of people understand how coverage works, and you can teach people how there's a certain amount of shots you need to get a day, and blah blah blah, and you can teach people the nuts and bolts of filmmaking so they could direct episodes of TV. But in terms of, well, why am I employing you over this director?
Yeah.
What is that thing that you're bringing to the table? And it's the fact that you are not that person. That's the best that's the most strongest thing you're bringing to the table.
Yeah.
So developing and leaning into what is authentic about yourself and your own brand is part of being employable.
Yeah.
I get employed because of who I am and how I make films, not as much as the fact that I understand how a film set works. And then the other component is, of course, I think the reason why people are so attracted to certain kinds of there are human beings, you see them and they are almost maskless, and they become kind of almost like these mythological human beings because they're so authentic. And of course, it's so captivating when people just come up and bare their souls. And the more vulnerable you are, people, it just like, it becomes this like, people are just attracted to the truth, because it helps them make sense of the world and the life. And I found that the moment I started being more vulnerable and sharing the truth was the moment that my films and my stories started to connect and travel internationally in a way they never had before.
It's a fascinating idea, the idea of authenticity. And also, I think, when you're telling stories, because the authenticity is not necessarily always that you've personally experienced it, but that you have an authentic understanding of that, where, be it empathy or, empathetic, or you just actually know what that's like, what that character is doing. And I think, in the sense of being a director and being a good director, is that you know where to go with the actor because you know that character. Whether or not you've met them or you've worked with them or you've spent time with them or as a friend or whatever, but you have an understanding of this character type or this type of person, and that allows you. So in that sense, I'm saying that the authenticity is not just it's just me. It's also I really understand that as well, and what that looks like.
Working with actors is really about. Not every actor obviously is their own person. They're not you, and they haven't lived your life experiences. So how do you get them to a place where you believe what's going on? And a lot of that's about translating the subtext of a scene in a way that becomes relatable. And good storytelling is universal, and so not everyone has to have gotten to the point where they wanted to kidnap someone in their family. But there is a point where, have you ever been in a toxic relationship before? And it doesn't have to be. The audience never knows what that direction is. It's if you're playing the truth of really what that's about. And I think you just have to find a way to build that common bridge, and that is part of the task of directing performance.
I think there's sort of a majesty to directing, in the sense of being able to communicate very complex ideas simply. So like you say, bringing it down to an emotional idea that the actor can connect with and doesn't need to necessarily have been, let's say, like in an action film or whatever. No, you don't necessarily have to have been shot at.
That's right.
But I have, but that's a whole other story. But because it's not. Being shot at's not the thing. It's not the thing that you're communicating. What you're communicating is the fear. And,
correct.
Everyone's been afraid. And so you can go to that point and get that authenticity in the being shot at, scenario, by going to the fear, and like what I'm saying is that idea of bringing things down to explaining complex ideas simply. And I think that's...
Directing should be simple, clear, and playable, not paragraphs of information that a person's walking around trying to hold in their head. It's just going to be the ability to distill something down to a single sentence is so critical, especially with writing. It's like, what is the scene about? What is the movie about? What are you really trying to communicate? Because for me, it's always, there's a movie and this is the plot. If thematically it's really, really complex and the plot's really complex, you can't really get that deep. But if the story is this simple, we can drill down and down and down and down. But if you've got all this shit going on, it's only going to be this deep. So really, that simple clarity of, I'm a person, I just want to do this thing, and then we go down the well of the human experience.
It's I'd be terrible at it, just because I just don't have those like thematic storyline clarity.
I was
I just
terrible at it. Like you just practice and learn and
yeah.
Submit to failure until you get better.
Yeah. I think, and have the desire to. I think also, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this because I don't know and I don't do it, but I feel like everybody who does it has something to say. Would you agree with that?
I think if you don't have something to say, you're probably getting paid a hell of a lot of money because filmmaking is such a hard job, especially writing. Like writing is so difficult. Like I've done most gigs on set, and it is just it's always by yourself. You're always doubting yourself. It takes so long to do it.
Yeah.
Then the moment it's done, it's criticized and what parts aren't working, and then you go back and you do draft after draft, and you just and so
you've got to be a masochist.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that idea of sorry,
I was saying you've got to have something to say, or maybe a belief in the project or whatever,
So to go on that journey,
for
me personally, I'm driven by there's a political argument thematically in the world that I'm trying to make. There's this thing that's going. There's an idea I want to explore.
Yeah.
Unless it's really exciting me and it's so important that I communicate that, I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give up that man of my life. I'd rather just read a book and enjoy my life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're not going to take that much criticism and punishment, which I know that like any type of artistic people get. I did a play once, and I got written up about it, and the write-up, I was talking to Alex about this. The write-up was a ratty Russell Crowe. That's what I got. That was me. Like
that was your sentence.
That was it. That was my sentence. A ratty Russell Crowe. And to this day, I mean, I don't know who wrote it, but it has stayed with me. But the thing is that kind of stuff does stay with you. When you do performances and you just put yourself out there. And, that guy who wrote that doesn't know all the hours behind the scenes of the rehearsals I was doing. This is theatre, by the way, so it's like, live performances. And, just hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of shit, practice and rehearsals and doing your lines and then doing it a different way and then just trying this, try that, blah, 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 until you come up with your finished product. And, I was really happy with the character I did, and I don't think I did anything bad. But the disservice I felt done to me in the one line of he looks like someone else, and it doesn't even look a lot like him, just a bit.
Yeah.
In that, and I guess what I'm saying is I really hear you when you say, the amount of criticism and things of just unthinking people who
you're bearing your soul.
Yeah. You're putting yourself.
You're kind of going out naked, and people are just like. Just making fun of you.
Yeah, it can be like that. It can be like that.
Resilience is a hell of a thing that you have to learn in filmmaking. Because the reality is that's always going to happen. And I've kind of got to the point where I'm like, I know there's people who are going to like my stuff. There are people who won't. As long as people either hate or love it, and they don't walk away feeling indifferent and go meh. That's kind of where I'm at now. For me, it's the emotional experience, and do you understand what I was trying to communicate? Because I used to be like that, and it just I got to the point where I'm like, can I handle this for the rest of my life?
Yeah.
Well, I've got to find a way to make that work. Otherwise, I'm never going to enjoy doing this.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, just to defend you, I always think like. Acting, I mean, not everyone's going to know this, but as far as I'm concerned, if you don't like an actor's performance or you've got an issue with the choices they're making, blame the director, because the director actually said yes.
Yeah.
That's okay, or I agree with that choice. So it's actually the actor is making offers. The director can say to you, actually, no.
Yeah.
I'll play it like this instead. So as far as I'm concerned, any bad performance in a movie is not the actor's fault. It's either the director, they've cast the wrong person, or they've given the wrong direction, because the people are saying yes.
Yeah.
That's
I think on the other side of it too is just there's a lot of people out there that don't know shit. and you kind of
I'm one of them.
well, yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of people out there who make big statements about that was shit or that was, and I think because of that like now I'm quite a bit older, so I have the benefit of hindsight, but now to me is the thing becomes, am I happy with it? Am I happy with what I've done? And I think also when you get older, like the older you get, the more you think, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for quite a while, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Actually,
There are some things I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, sometimes I risk, and I try something and it will be, maybe that didn't work or maybe it did work, and I know that I'm doing that. But also I know it's kind of a thing, like once you've put a certain amount of years into something, you kind of, I think you should be able to allow yourself the capacity to say, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing.
It took me ages to even feel comfortable saying that. Like, really, it's only been in the last year or two that I've been like, I think I can make a movie. Like, and people have been saying for a lot longer, you should be making a film. Why haven't you made a film right now? You're really good. I'm like, I don't know. I feel I need to practice these things, blah, blah, blah. Because there's that voice side going,
you're a fraud.
Do you know how to do this thing? Is it really, this is a really complicated thing. But now I've kind of gone, you know what, like I have to back myself.
Yeah, you do. I think
it takes a while. I think, like you're saying, you have to be older to kind of grow into your own skin and go, well, this is who I am. Yeah. This is how I'm going to do it. And I'm committing to it.
Yeah, I want to do it this way. I'm going to do it this way. And, as long as I'm happy with it as a final product at the end, then, I'm happy that I did that. And you can say what you like. And, some of your points might be valid. But
yeah, I mean, talking about judging people's work now, I've definitely changed as I've gotten older and done more stuff. When I was younger, I was very arrogant and egotistical. And, you watch certain films or people are making, and you're kind of thinking, it's best shit, or why did they make that film? Or,
I wouldn't have done it that way.
Yeah, of course. And then you realize just how hard it is to do, and also how many other elements there are in filmmaking that can affect the way a film's directed. All of a sudden there's other financiers and producers who are changing the cut, or blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Oh,
and so now I try not to, even the bigger the budget, I criticize the films less now. Like I used to be like, hey, Avatar, that's fucking shit. But, and now I'm just kind of like, whatever, those things are really hard to make, and you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. And if the director comes out unscathed and continues to want to be a filmmaker, like they've done a good job. So I find that I'm much more respectful of people, whereas when I was younger, I was just like, that sucks.
Well, I think that's age. I think if I was to be succinct about it, I think words flow out of a young man's mouth easily, and possibly without a great deal of thought. Usually,
well, it's also an education of market. I think that's one of the big things that's happened to me, and finding my place in the world. Like when you're young, you're like, why didn't they just make a film like this film? You're like, well, that's because it's a French art house film from 50 years ago, and that would make no money at the cinemas, and you actually, as you get older and you need money to survive, and you realize films cost a lot of money to make, and they need an audience and blah, 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 you start to go, okay. I mean, this is a big thing that's been sort of my life for the last 5 years, is working out what are with the films that I want to make, how is that a possibility, given that they're not overly commercial, but so how, I have to think really smart about, what's the size and the scale, and how do I get that to an audience, which is why my film is two people in a location, because it's a specific kind of hard drama that's not necessarily like this high concept thing that's going to be immediately gravitating towards a huge audience. But what it is it's thematically, I think, universal. But I guess what I'm trying to say is you start to realize the bigger picture in terms of how the world and movies work, and it's not just about having a great idea. There are other components. There's an economic side to the art.
Definitely.
Filmmaking is a very expensive art form. If you just, and so that has certainly been a thing of how do you manage the economic side and the integrity of what you want to say and where that meets in the middle.
Yeah, it's so many factors go into making a movie, and
oh yeah,
probably 1% of them are considered when shit flows out of a critic's mouth. It's
that's
like
ultimately that any movie gets made anyway.
Yeah, it's a strange thing, the idea of criticism and how you deal with it, and so yeah, I would probably always go back to that idea of, are you happy? Are you happy with what you did? And I think something about that is about the idea of walking on the earth with integrity. That like, fuck it. I made that. Yeah, I made that movie. Yeah, I fucked some shit up. Yep, I did. Yep, good. Yeah, I did. But
absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I used to look at some of the older stuff I made and just be like, oh, it sucks. And I'm embarrassed and I'd hate it and I'd badmouth it. And now I'm more of the mindset of that was the best I could do at that time.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I see all the learnings, and I see in between the edits the emergence of what I was trying to do, and I see the shape of my voice coming out.
Yeah.
And so now I'm not like, that sucks. I'm like, that was a part of forging and finding who I am as a filmmaker, and that's just something that's going to happen forever.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, well, yeah, it's interesting that you say it will happen forever, because I think it probably will, and I think it's about the idea that these things that you've made, you can look back on fondly. I think the more distance you get from them, I think the immediacy of each one is like, how well did I do it? And you've kind of got all these immediate ideas about what you've just done. Like, it's new and it's fresh and it's right there.
That's right.
But when you've had some time to sit with them and go back to them, I mean, they're done and you can't go back and undo them unless you go for like a director's cut and like rework your movie and re-release it or whatever, if you ever get to that position where you can. But I think as long as you were being true to yourself at the time, I think you always look back and go, you know what, that works. That was good for what it was, for what we did then. I think about some of the early short films that I did, and I think, yeah, man, like, I actually think they're great. And when you start thinking about all the things that could have fucked up and all the things that had to come together to make that happen, and like no budgets and getting film gear from universities and just things that you had to have, and it's like, it's a triumph, really. It's more of a triumph.
I can't tell you the amount of times now on significantly bigger jobs where I'm like, we can't do this, we're running out of time, and I'm like, I think, okay, how are we going to do this? Oh, we'll do this with the camera and this thing. And why do I know to do that? Because I did that as a weird shot of some obscure short film 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And now, it's a get out of jail card.
Yeah.
From my past learnings, and having that up your sleeve on a TV commercial or something that's, where there is no real room for failure, and having those pieces of muscle memory floating around your brain, it's invaluable when you're kind of like, oh, thank God I made that movie, because I'm standing on the shoulders of that no budget film.
Exactly. So yeah, I think there becomes a fondness for the earlier pursuits. Like I say, if you're being true to yourself, it's kind of like the universe honors something about you being true to yourself. And I guess this ties back into that idea of authenticity as well, is that, if you're being true and honest about what you're doing, even if you're screwing it, and not doing great with it, but you're trying and you're being honest about the effort that you're putting in and what you're doing, I think it seems to take you somewhere. And also, I think I was talking to Alex about this, and also Ant, other people as well. But like, when you do that, somehow there seems to be some kind of thing where things that you didn't plan happen. And it's like those things, these magic moments that happen are kind of your reward for being, like, having your wholeheartedness, or
totally,
putting yourself into it. And
I'll tell you two examples of that. one is from about 10 years ago, exactly from yesterday, which was I used to do a lot of music performance and poetry performances, and I entered this competition, this poetry slam, and I've been doing it for a few years and like coming up with quite kind of cool, clever poems, and like, you know, they were always kind of getting good feedback from, I guess, an intellectual perspective.
Yeah.
But they were quite dressed up in terms of the authenticity of what I was wanting to say, quite heavily disguised if we talk about masks.
Yeah.
And then I just wrote this one, and it was like the most, I guess, reduced back to what I was trying to say thematically, and it was almost uncomfortable to write, and I was feeling that, and that's the truth.
Yeah.
You know, the stomach. Anyway, I wrote this thing, and it was really uncomfortable, and I performed it, and I was like, I think it's good. Anyway, before into this competition, won, you know, the West Australian Poetry Slam. Then I went to represent WA and came fourth in Australia with this poem.
Yeah.
And then off the back of it, I started sort of doing all these poetry gigs, which was amazing. I sort of, it was kind of kept me afloat for about 12 months. But that feeling of understanding that this is the truth that I'm sharing with, and then coming all the way to the future when I was talking to you about when my script editor said you got to you know answer these questions. I had that feeling, and I remembered last time I engaged with this,
it took me somewhere good.
It connected with people, and it worked. And so with the short film, what was quite crazy was how this whole film came out was totally crazy, because it was just I was actually writing a sci-fi film, and that was the movie I was trying to get up, and that's actually something that's going reasonably well as well in the background. But this wasn't really the feature I was planning on making. And then I had an opportunity with some students to do a bit of a small film exercise, and that needed to be a really tiny thing. And I started writing something, and I said, I can try and experiment with that idea I had for a film, and we'll just do a little kidnapping thing. And then someone from Screen West, I was talking to him about my sci-fi film, and I said, oh, do you want to see this little thing I did with my students, this little exercise? And he watched that, and he was like, dude, that's your first movie. It's good, you know, like that's just obviously you know, it's small, contained, but it's so true and it's so real in what you're doing there. And then it was just like, of course, the moment I just spoke that truth. And then I was in America last year with the short film, and it played, and it was such an amazing experience because, you know, it was kind of uncomfortable sort of seeing, every time I watch, I'm kind of like, oh God, you know? And then
I hear you.
After the screen, I did a Q&A and sort of talked about the origin of the film. And as I was leaving the cinema, this girl came up to me, and she probably was about 15 years old, and she's, you know, shaking. And she said to me, can I please talk to you? And I said, sure. And she said, you know, I've never told anyone this before, you know, but my mum's an alcoholic, and I'm really scared of her, and blah, blah, blah. And what had happened was, of course, by sharing your truth, you empower other people to share theirs. And that moment was just the moment where I was just like, I have to just double down on this feature film. You know, like it's so important that I continue to be authentic, because it's the best thing I can do with my own storytelling, even if sometimes it's scary, but it's all growth, and it's all good.
Yeah, well, I think get back to that idea of things being scary and uncomfortable. You know, it's, you know, most human beings on the planet follow the path of least resistance. You know, it's kind of the way to go, because, hey, you know, it's easier that way, so I'll go that way, you know. And then when you find something that you're passionate about and you want to follow, there's an element of discomfort and fear, you know, that comes along with that. And so I'm really interested in that idea, because I think that from what you're saying, it's the kind of the place where things get achieved. And I guess in some sense is this, you know, if you follow your passions, you're going to have to be brave.
100%. 100%. And it's also, in a way, it's brave, but also, I guess, art is sometimes a safe place to open up because, it requires you to engage with your fears, but I'm not all the actors in the movie.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I have to write it, which is the scariest part, but I'm able to have a team around me, and it's not just me. A documentary, documentary is the part where, I could never do a documentary version of this.
Yeah.
So there is that probably degree of still sitting outside it.
Yeah.
But so it's kind of it is a safe place to really open up.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point because, and it's something I hadn't considered, is that idea of, you get to this discomfort and you get to this place of fear, and I think it's natural, right? If you're just kind of bearing your soul or bearing your story for other people to interact with, that's a scary place to be. But I really like the idea that you're saying that, filmmaking and artistic pursuit, if you will, sort of in a bigger scale, is a safe space to be able to do that. And I really like that idea. I'm not really going anywhere with that.
There's no consequences there's no consequences for an actor kidnapping another actor. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In terms of, it's not like a real kidnapping.
Yeah.
So I'm able to, what happened as a result of me writing that film is it really helped in terms of my own mental health and my family and everything that was to do with that story in reality by writing and pursuing that.
Yeah.
But I didn't have to go through the reality of it.
Yeah.
So, I managed to benefit from that in terms of, but in a safe environment. With the support of obviously producers who are aware of, guiding me through it, making sure I feel it's not just me on my own doing that. They're a team of my close friends around me.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing, and it's something that I didn't think of, and it's like an illumination for me having this conversation, hearing this about it. I mean, of course, it makes sense, but sometimes until someone shows you something, you don't really see it. Until.
Well, I mean, it made sense for me only when I started doing it. And every time I wasn't doing it, there were the projects that weren't working.
Yeah. And again, that's it. It's that thing of, it's kind of like this idea of, how we totally agree on this idea of authenticity. But I think the reason that you get there is because you see even when you are not being authentic, but you're kind of wanting to be, but you're not, and you see that that's not working, and it's like I've got to be somewhere else. I've got to explore. There's more to this. I haven't quite got there. I haven't quite found the essence of this.
I always think about it like I love dancing, and I grew up dancing when I was younger, and I practiced dancing all the time. And I was friends with dancing, and as I've gotten older, I dance less and less. And I become less and less comfortable dancing,
Wow.
Unless I'm like kind of shit faced, basically.
At
a part, and people are egging me on. And but I'm if I was to go out to a nightclub, which I don't really do, but if I was, I probably would feel really self-conscious about dancing. It would take me a long time to, even though I actually, I'm reasonably good at it. And so, what is that? And it's inability to be the authentic version of that's actually what it is. I don't feel comfortable expressing myself. And so really often what I'm thinking about anytime I'm making a story, whether it's a movie or a script or a poem, is this is the story of a person who needs to, who can't dance in public and has to learn to dance in public. It's always that story.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I really, really love that. It's funny because before we were doing the podcast, I was thinking about the dance sequence that you'd done, and in my family we don't dance, right? So it's sort of a thing, for us. And I've always had this thing in my mind has always been, why don't we dance? And I think there's so much to that, you know, to that idea of authenticity and freedom, I think, but also
because we're going to embarrass
fearlessness.
ourselves.
Yeah,
And
fearlessness.
we're not in control. When you're dancing, you're not necessarily in control.
Yeah, yeah. It's just, it's really interesting that you brought it up though, because I was having this thought today about the idea of dancing.
That is bizarre.
Yeah, yeah. It's just one of those, you know, crazy things that's happened, but it's yeah, it's a fascinating thing, and I like that it's the idea of being yourself, you know, being that authentic you. And also, it's a really interesting thing because it kind of makes me think: can I be the authentic me? You know, in that sense, and it's a really good question to ask yourself. I think for anyone.
I mean, the other thing. I mean, I'm forever jealous of people who at karaoke can sing when they can't sing.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
I can't. I hate going to karaoke because I'm a perfectionist, and so I know that there's a vocal range that I am comfortable performing in. Mm-hmm. So if a song is selected and I know that I can't hit that song, I won't do it. But then someone else will grab the microphone and they'll sing like an idiot and whatever, and they'd. But I'm just like, I want to be that person. Yeah, I want to be the person in the bar who can stand on stage, sing the song completely wrong, and just have a good time. And I think that's why we admire those people, because they have arrived at a place of such comfort that, you know, you don't care what other people think about you. And a big journey for me is learning how to not care.
Yeah, yeah. That's so I'm not the same as you in that, and I really like that you are that way. I see people, so I have a few friends and have known people in my life that are completely tone deaf and sing, you know, and just rip it out, you know. And to me, I'm like, dude, like, please, no, no more. Like, no, please. Like, I know you want to sing, but please don't, you know.
I mean, there's a difference between them doing it every day. You're just like, okay, like, look.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know some people who whistle, you know, like to whistle a tune, except you've got no idea what the tune is because they're tone deaf, and it's just what's coming out could be anything. It could be any tune. And I'm kind of like, oh man, I would just kind of wish you'd shut up, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously there are less annoying versions than singing of being authentic.
Yeah, yeah. But I like your perspective on it, that there is a desire in us all, I think, to be the person who will get up and sing knowing that they can't, but just expressing that desire to do it, you know, and to say, I want to have fun and I'm going to have fun. And, you know, I like your perspective on it, because what you're saying is that is the thing that should be validated over the capacity to sing, right? And
absolutely.
You know, I've sung in bands and stuff as well. Things, you know, I've done a ton of stuff in my life, but I've had cringe moments, man, where I've got on stage and people have played songs for me to sing sort of without being notified. But hey, we're just going to jump into this. And I'm going, I can't sing that song. I don't know. I know I can't sing this song. And one I've got here, look, this is a one that's talking about being authentic. One of these moments was I was in Les Mis in Perth at the Regal, and I have, you know, quite a few friends with bands in Perth and stuff, and I used to just jump up and sing with them. And I was at a bar, and I met this girl, and I was kind of interested in her, and she was a singer, and I was like, wow, you know, and quite a, you know, well-trained singer and that. And so I'm on stage, you know, filling in at my mate's band and stuff, and they did K-San, man, and I can't sing K-San. I really just don't get those notes. And I heard those flat notes come out, and I felt like and she cringed. I saw her in the audience, and she cringed, and I cringed when I was doing it, and I kind of wished I could have been anywhere else except there at the moment. And also at that time, I felt like it just felt like a competition, which, you know, in hindsight is a really good thing, because it showed me the reality of the situation, but like she just kind of ignored me after that. I was
Right.
like, you can't sing, and here you are telling me that you're in Les Mis, and I think you're full of shit. You know, that just can't be right. You know, and she was a really good singer and quite a well known singer. But yeah, man, I just had that. It's just such a horrible experience. So I guess I have those experiences, and then when I see people jump up and just sing and be completely shit, like you're saying at karaoke or whatever, and do that, I'm like, just don't do it, man. Don't do it. Like, you know, I kind of, maybe I think I'm trying to say to him, you don't know what this is going to cost you. Maybe. I mean, maybe that's what it is. But I really like your perspective on it, because I think that really is the most important part of it, is that these people are free and are being
they've
free
got
and
so much
having
joy.
fun. Yeah.
And it's a joy that I feel like has often been absent in my life. And I was like, I just want that ray of sunshine, because it looks so marvelous to be free from the constraints of the noise in my brain.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And I also think, though, that there's kind of a you know, you can kind of be a bit hard on yourself on that kind of thing as well, where you are probably very free in other areas where you will go, you know what, I'm going to make that cut, and that cut's the one that I want, and I'm going to do it. And they might be the people that are going, fuck, I don't know, what. I'd never do it. Don't do, you know, well, I don't understand, you know. And I think perhaps there's something to it in the idea of understanding, you know, and having that kind of empathy.
Yeah.
Where you're kind of feeling that empathy with this person, even though you don't have that freedom, you see it, you know, and you recognize it, you know. And I'm sure there are areas in your life where you do things that they would probably be, well, totally.
Well, I guess the challenge, of course, is when you are that person to stop and actually acknowledge that, and that probably will make your experience better.
Oh,
you know,
definitely.
there probably are, but I probably don't stop often enough to go, oh, it's kind of, I'm proud that I do this stuff and I don't apologize for it, because I'm probably too busy being immersed in it to actually take a moment to recognize that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, I had this same thing in the conversation with Ant, is not that I said these exact same words, but this is what I meant when I was talking to him, is that you've really got to take a bit of time out from time to time and go, I'm doing what I love. And sit back and actually enjoy loving what you do. You know.
Ant is like a really good friend of mine. He's worked on a bunch of projects. He cut a film that I wrote a year or two ago, and his attention to detail.
Yeah.
And he's so hypercritical, which is what makes him such a great filmmaker, because he's always chasing the 1%. And if you stack enough 1%, they just become the mountain over you know, the other filmmakers. And I'm just like looking at stuff he does. I'm just like, I could never do that. But he's always like, oh, this didn't quite work. And I'm just like, dude, I know. Man, you are so like, you know, an elite echelon. Like, just it's all good, man. It's all good. You're a genius. Like, I just want to remind you of that. I can't do anything you're doing.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the things I said to him, is like, you know, you've really got to take these things, the awards that you get and those things, and actually acknowledge them and put them into your cabinet, I guess, or whatever of your mind, and say, like, next time someone gives you some shit, well, hey man, I did do this and I did do this, and I'm actually good at what I do, you know. And I think for artistic people, I think this is everywhere, but they're always sort of the most critical of their own work, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is, I think, terrible. I don't think it does you any service to be super critical of your own work.
No, I'm trying to learn to enjoy screenings of my work. I used to go to them with screenings of my work, and I just sit there, and in my brain I'm like, that was wrong, that's not the right, that, you know, it's just like this. I'm like got a shopping list. I'm just dictating all the fuck ups from start to finish.
Yeah.
And there is a time for that, where where you can do that but not criticize and go, these are the things I could have done better for learning.
Yeah.
But not beating yourself up. And now, like, I went to a screening the other week, and there was a bunch of things that needed to be better, but I didn't sit there punishing myself, because I'm like, well, I'm in a cinema with all my friends. I need to enjoy this moment. It's not none of these changes are going to happen now.
Yeah.
So I just, like, as I'm not opening the edit tomorrow, it's done. So I might as well just enjoy myself. And that has taken so long to get to that point.
Oh yeah.
So I just want to enjoy my life. You know
I think
I'm so critical of it all the time. I just want to actually have a good time.
Yeah, that criticism, that self-criticism really robs you of that enjoyment. And I think it's kind of a theme I try to have with my guests on the podcast, is to really allow yourself to enjoy those moments, like you're saying, with your friends, and say, I did good, you know, and no one does perfect, you know, and to just say I did good, and you're all telling me I did good, and I think also just to learning to take compliments, I think, is a really big one, you know.
I'm the worst at that.
To allow yourself to say, like when someone says, "Hey man, you did a really great job with that," to just be able to say, "Thanks, man. Like, I really appreciate you saying that," and you know, instead of going, no, like, you know, if you'd known, like, I had this perfect shot and then I cut it and I lost the footage, and oh man, and you know, like all the bad things that went wrong, and you just go back to the criticism side of things, you miss out on what that does for you and that confidence for you. That's
my
real.
entire journey. Yeah, you're literally describing me, and I'm just like, I was just always like that with everything, and what I actually had a really good directing mentor, and he really pull me up, because there's one thing that I did and he really liked it and he complimented me. I'm like, oh yeah, you know what, you know, and I kind of dismissed it, and he was like, no, hold on a second, and he wouldn't allow me to leave until I accepted the compliment, and I said that I thought it was good and I'd done a good thing. And what he was really trying to teach me was that, you know, A, it's okay to think that you've done a good job, and B, you should actually stop and appreciate that you've done something good. And that was really really valuable lesson, actually.
And also you get the benefit of being able to enjoy what you've done. You know, if you stay there with self-criticism.
I want to enjoy what I'm doing. Otherwise, what the hell am I doing? Just like going through this punishing. Why do you make films? Oh, just so that I can get to the screening and hate my life.
Yeah, and think of absolutely every flaw, rather than thinking about all the moments of wonder and great, you know, film that you've put on. I think it's a really good place to go. Now I'm just going to change tack with you a bit, because there's a few other things that we haven't spoken about and I'd really like to talk to you about, and that is making music clips.
Sure.
Yeah, so there's making movies, right? And they're like highly scripted, and music clips, you've kind of already got the script. So how do I don't know. I'm not saying I want you to expose like your secrets or whatever, but you know, how do you approach something where you've got the music, and music is like one of those super subjective things that you know, I feel about one song this way, and you'll feel about the same song completely differently to me. And where do you go when you're planning to make a video clip? I mean, what's the process like?
I've got a very clear answer, because I've had to sort of explain this a lot of times. But is it? I'm busting to go to the toilet.
Yeah.
You put it back in 5 minutes.
What I'll do is I'll just cut it and we'll come back. Yeah, that's really easy.
Otherwise, I'll think about needing to pee while we're talking.
Okay, no drama. Okay,
we're back.
Yeah, I'm just gonna have to check. I think we're back. Yep, we are. Cool. So we were talking about the idea of making video clips, right, and movie clips, and I think it's really interesting just from the idea that the script's already there, and it's known. You know, like the music is known, and then you have to work with it. So yeah, let's get on to that. And
cool. So for me, there's three things that happen with a music video in terms of the images that you attach to it. One is there's obviously the performance-based version of the clip, which is we're a band, we play, we want you to film us playing.
Yeah.
And there's an element of creativity around how that looks, but that's a pathway. The second one is a narrative, which is a narrative that really just speaks to what is the song about. So it's a love story song, and now we have a love story 3-minute short film that with actors. And then the third one is the one that I'm the most interested in, which is imagery that is evoked by the music, which is kind of that what we are talking about earlier, which is that sort of place that I was trying to get to with my feature film, which is why is it then we hear a certain song mapped to an image that not necessarily has anything to do with it that creates feeling, and that's that abstract world. And for me, that's what I'm interested in. So usually when I get a song, I'm looking, if I don't have constraints like we want it to be this thing, which is always awful when a band is just telling you exactly what they want, because I think, well, you don't really want a director, you want a camera operator.
Yeah.
I want to dream, so I usually just put the song on repeat and just go for a walk. Most of my writing and my work in general is just walking laps of the park where you're just sort of freeing your mind, and images just flood. And then usually what happens is as the images flood, I sort of start to ask questions that I would ask in a script. Why is this person here? Who are they? What are they doing? And I start to construct this narrative around that. And I find that it's always the music videos that have that element that have, again, done well. You know, I made a music video with a guy called Matsu about 5 or 6 years ago for a band called Willow Beats, and the song had the sound of water, and we decided to make this a narrative about the artist goes underwater and all these people live underwater and she's trying to escape. And then we had images of her standing on water. And we sort of constructed a very loose metaphorical narrative that I'm sure no one could actually pitch back to us beat by beat what the hell the story.
Oh, what's happened there? We've gone into okay. So we just had a big freeze. It's still now you're back. Yep. Okay. Yep.
Cool. I'm not sure how much of that you heard, but basically with that last one, we had all these images, and it was about having that framework that allows us to provide a sense of order to the madness. And then, of course, the other thing that always dictates music videos is locations and time. Yeah. And so you're sort of sitting within that playing field of what is a really interesting location. We only have a certain amount of time. What is the point of difference that I can play into, and how do I make that interesting? So the great thing about music videos, and they're very different to the movies I make, which are usually kind of this harder drama life exploration, is I can just do I'm going to try and do a shot where someone's standing on water backwards, blah, blah, that's something you'd never have in a kitchen sink drama. And so music videos is a place to explore and play. And so I'm always looking for, what is that shot, or what is that thing I've never been able to do before? And one of the last ones I made was, I just want to see if I can build a set in 3 minutes from scratch. So the whole music video was one shot where you just start with a room of people, and you hear my voice. So my voice at the start, the take is 3, 2, 1. The spirit of music video be with us. Action. The song starts. They just run and start grabbing flats, and we built a whole lounge room. And I would never do that in a movie. It's just an idea that I wanted to sort of try. And so music videos is the world where you get to play. And for me, I've loved it, and I learned a lot doing it. But also the constraints, because there's usually not a lot of money. You learn a lot about lighting and a lot about camera from a technical, and also editing. I learned a lot about editing because you're trying crazy things in the edit. And I've probably cut 30 or more music videos. And so learning the rhythm of how images work in coordination with music is that's been so valuable once you take it back to drama, because you realize you can manipulate images and pull them apart and make them do different things that maybe then shouldn't do conventionally. You can chop them frame by frame, and you can pull them apart and break scenes and make them do odd things that create a feeling that is beyond just overt narrative.
Yeah, I really like this idea that seems to be, I don't know, your thing. I don't know if we'd go as far as to say it's sublime, but the idea of the sublime being that idea where emotions are transferred, but in a way that sometimes is intended and sometimes not intended, but that where words fail us, where there's absolutely no way to explain it. And it seems to be that's the kind of thing that you're looking for in your movie
Yeah, you're looking for the
making.
places in between.
Yeah, yeah,
That whatever that world is in between the gap.
yeah. I think that is possibly the height of artistic endeavor is the sublime, where
Yeah,
you're unable, like it's where you connect and people connect, and it's the thing that happens to people when they stand in front of a painting and then they cry. It it's that connection that happens, and there's no dialogue happening at all. There's
and how do you script that?
yeah, but it does happen, and it happens in movies, and it happens in and there are movies that are tearjerkers, that are set up with the music and the storyline, and
There's a construction to the structure that's building that moment.
to making you to like evoke that emotional response. But there are other times when that emotional response happens, and it's because of a kind of beauty, but also it's something that can't be controlled, and I don't know if I don't really know the answer to these questions, but in that area, I mean, the sublime is like one of the most fascinating places for artistic endeavor, because it's that place where things happen that happen to people, a lot.
Yeah,
I think maybe that's the sign of true sublime or whatever, is the amount of times it happens. But
you're chasing the moments. That's, to me, is what you're doing. You're always chasing that. How do you capture that?
Yeah, and well, I guess what I hear you saying is that you don't want to be making the traditional choices, I guess,
No.
is a way to put it.
The obvious choice is the uninteresting choice to me.
Yeah, yeah. So you're not really wanting to make the obvious choices, or even what filmmaking language might dictate would be the best choice. But the ones where you say, like when you're talking about your music videos, is the places where you feel something and there's an image attached to that feeling that may be completely unrelated to what's being said, and yet it makes perfect sense. Does that make any sense? Am I making any sense?
No. I mean, it's hard. It's a hard thing to describe.
Yeah, it is. It is very.
I'll tell you a really good story of someone explaining it, which I always use and all the time. Steve McQueen, the director, he talks about chasing butterflies, and he says he goes to the set early. He was talking about directing 12 Years a Slave, and he said he'd go to set early with the DOP, and even every filmmaker has a plan, but he'd just go there and kind of just wonder and dream, and he's sort of just, what he's looking for is just the butterfly that the camera's going to just capture with the butterfly net that can't be predicted, and he's sort of looking for those moments that are butterfly catching. And for me, that's the attraction of how do we get all the elements in play with all the right people on set. And then for me, I'm always trying to make sure when I'm making movies that there's enough space and time, and it's simple enough so that we can just, with the actors, play an experiment, and we're trying to catch butterflies. Because for me, if you can get 3 in a movie or even 1, I think that's this magic that
definitely.
But you've got to actually provide the safety, the permission for everyone to go to that place to try and do that.
Yeah, I think you really hit it. I think you hit the nail on the head there, that it's about space, and it's about providing space. And like you're saying, a safe space as well. But I think even just for directors, And I don't know. I'm not a director, and I know a few, so I don't really know per se as directors are, but I suspect that if quite a few of them are control freaks and really want it, that they have a vision, and this is my
Absolutely.
vision. And I talked to Ben about this, that people get locked into ideas, and then it becomes their idea, and they get very precious with it, and then they won't let anyone move, and that works as the antithesis of providing that space, and you don't get those moments of
the film's edited behind their eyes before they've even shot a frame.
and but that's what I'm saying. I really, really enjoy that idea of having that space to allow like the magic to happen, to allow those to say to the actor, you know what, run with it. You run with it in this and just go wherever it takes you. I'm not going to tell you anything. Go with what you're feeling about this character and what you're doing, and have a go at it. And let's see what let's go
happens. Down these rabbit holes and see if we can mine some gold. I might talk you through the creation process of this museum dance video because it really speaks to that.
Yeah.
So, the whole concept, like I said previously, is we had to create this art in this new building, and the architecture it's just a magnificent building. And so the whole idea was that we had to create art and videos that responded to the architecture. And that was kind of the overarching principle. But it was essentially, take these amazing artists, film them in these amazing space, and it's a way to advertise the building.
Yeah.
And I just sort of said, please let me do a solo dance one, because what I just straight away the turnaround of these videos was absolutely insane. I said, I just want to do a solo dance because I want the freedom to just dance with the camera with someone and just see what happens, which is a really risky thing to say to people. I just want to make it up. And so I walked through the space and I thought about that idea of this building, and the building, for those who haven't seen it or won't watch the video, it's lots of gold railings and gold stairs. It's really influenced by gold threads that run along the tiles, and there's all these strings of gold. And I thought, okay, if it's a response to the architecture, what happens if the building gives birth to this entity and the response is created through the energy of this new space? And then obviously, okay, what the hell does that look like? And then what happens with this entity? Well, if it's new, what happens? You grow and you learn to walk and you get more confident and you become more free and you're moving, and then you return to the space. And I met the dancer literally just over a week before we shot that for the first time in the museum.
Whoa.
And we just went for a walk through this thing. And I said, look, we don't have a lot of time. I really, really hope that you're open to the idea of collaboration and devising, and you don't have a pre-existing work that you just want to make in here.
Be that way,
because I want to make something new. And then we just walked through and we talked about it. And then we spent half a day in a studio just talking about, and he was sort of educating me about what he could do with his body.
Yeah.
And we sort of came up with this idea that, okay, let's come up with a narrative triangle. And I went to my friend's house who was a composer, and we sort of said, look, this guy's going to be born and it's going to be this sort of sound design aesthetic, and we don't need space for him to sort of come, and then boom, he's going to have learned and he's going to be a part of the building. So we want, a sense of music to come in, and then returning to that texture. So if you give me 3 distinct musical parts, we'll go and we'll just dance to it, and I'll dance to the camera and he'll dance with his body. And there was just these loose ideas. And then of course there are obviously cinematic parts in the museum. So I just scheduled an hour in each location of the day, and I made sure that the camera kit was mobile, it was on a trolley. We weren't trying to set up these big things, and it was scheduled around where the sun was around the building. And we just went, and I'm like, all right, this is the part where you're flowing free. I think this is a good place. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to describe to you what I think we're chasing. And then it was no choreography, and we just filmed it. And then
it was awesome.
It was just so amazing, because I never sat down and got, right, what's going to happen is shot 1 is a guy, he's under fabric, but like it's not scripted like that. And then as opposed, and it was just ideas of shots, like the one in my head where there's a part where this fabric flies through the air up between the gold staircase.
Yeah.
And that was just an image in my head, and I was like, okay, well, how do we tie him to the museum? Or maybe he's a bit of gold paint on him, and we've got this fabric. I said, this fabric's just got to fly through the museum like an alien being.
Yeah.
You know, there's this alien being. Okay, let's just chuck it down there and put it in reverse, and it'll either look good or look terrible.
It looked really good, actually. Yeah.
And on the day, I was just so fortunate that the museum and the producers and the Perth Festival were just really supportive, because normally, you know, people will be like, okay, we need the storyboards, we need to know what we're basically paying for. And I just, you know, and I was so blessed, not blessed, but I'm so thankful that they allowed me to go on this creative journey to make art. And on that shot, they were just, I remember them all around the monitor, all the, you know, the people who were kind of, the producers and these people, and they were just like, and a lot of them hadn't worked with me before, they'd just seen my work.
Yeah.
And I think they were just kind of thinking, what the fuck
Who
is he
is
doing?
this guy?
He's going to throw this cloth down here, and they set out the camera. Yeah. And we did it. And then I just said, play that back in reverse in slow motion for them. And then everyone was just like, oh. And I think that's everyone's trust. Yeah. But it was.
He knows what he's doing. Look, hey, look.
Perfect example of devising through imagery and fitting.
Yeah. And that's why, before we started this podcast, you know, I was asking you about, were there storyboards for that one? Because I was just like when I was watching it, I was going, man, this is flowing, and I was thinking, if you had storyboards for that, like, they must have been the most complex set of storyboards I've ever seen in my life, because the way that it was filmed and the way, and especially like the dance moves and everything with it, and the amount of styles that dancer drew upon to make that happen was just phenomenal. And so of course
it's the evolution of the narrative threads. You know what I mean? That these can't be explained, but there was a structure.
Yeah. And so that led me to the question of, fuck, were there storyboards for this? Like, it just it just hit me. That
you know
what
you're not seeing is the experiments that didn't work.
Okay.
So you know, there was one shot where he goes up all this kind of other this wooden staircase, and me and the DOP was like, let's shoot that 2 frames a second, speed it up, and it'll look like an old Wong Kar-wai film. And I was like, let's do it, and it'll look awesome. And it looked really cool, but it just didn't fit into the style that we're doing. And there was a couple of things like that, but we just we just were like, let's just try stuff. And but there's a degree of responsibility. So off all the music videos I'd done before that, I knew, okay, to actually get enough in the edit, there's a few things I need to do, and there's a few things. So I was able to, talking about, you know, leaning back on that muscle memory, I would have totally fucked that up if I had made 30 music videos and I had done all that filmmaking, because I knew, okay, if this doesn't work, I know at least if I put the camera there and the dancers, it's going to look good. I knew how to at least walk away with something that will work in the edit. Yeah. But give myself the freedom to actually go for the gold.
So just a personal question. How long did it take to edit that?
So there was a post-production house that was part of the producers. So they had an editor, which was a really interesting experience for me, because I'm used to editing all my own stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know another editor. And so I thought, okay, cool, I'll get them to put the edit together, and I can obviously give my feedback. And Rob, who cut it, is really awesome guy, because he's actually a musician as well, and he has that kind of innate flow of not just straight editing. And so he did an edit, and I did some notes, and I probably spent less than a day in the edit suite fine-tuning it. We just had no time on this job. It was about a day. It was probably 2 days in total, if we're lucky. It probably wasn't even that.
Wow.
And so this goes back to shooting ratio. You know, like nearly everything we shot is in that clip, except for 1 or 2 things. And I'm talking about camera setups. So it was that going, all right, we're at the new location. Me and the DP were like, okay, it's only going to look good here. It's going to look the best from here, given the amount of time we have to light. I know he needs to dance exactly like that. Let's do that. Yeah. And so And then with the structure of the thing, it just becomes kind of the editing. There's a shape to the edit that I'm already providing with how it's shot. I wasn't just like, just cool dancing and we'll just fucking run around and shoot wide shots and mid shots and close ups. And, it wasn't like that. And so I was kind of explaining to producers, I already had the edit in my head as we were shooting, not prior, but as we were shooting, I was cutting throughout the day, so that it was able to inform the choices I was making in the afternoon. And that's off the back of music video editing.
Yeah, man, it just, it was really awesome, man. I really enjoyed seeing it. And it's one of those creative pieces that just kind of stands alone as a creative piece. It's one of, can't really explain it.
Well, I can say I'm very proud of it. I've learned to say I'm proud of things.
Yeah, good, man. That's a good thing. And you should well be proud of it too. It's a really, really nice, beautiful piece. And, but I have my own things about dancing. So, seeing that kind of dancing and that is always sort of a strange thing for me because I don't really understand it. But I could see... You're lucky you had that guy too. I mean, he was a great dancer. And
the story of how we got him is COVID.
Yeah, and the like you were saying earlier, the things that he was saying about what he could do with his body and the way that he moved was really, really interesting and not typical. Not kind of atypical of what you'd expect from that kind of dancing.
No,
and so
he had watched so much dance videos because he's from that world.
Yeah.
And so what was great is I was like, tell me everything that could be cliche that I'm bringing to the table. Yeah. So I was able to get him to help because I'm not always filming. I don't film contemporary dance often. Yeah. So I was able to get him to kind of go, oh, this is kind of, and he sent me some links and he kind of educated me on what are in the dance world. So I was able to sort of go, okay, cool. And then obviously his talent, working with someone. I mean, when you have a really good, this is like a classic music video lesson in itself. Good talent, great location. You're not having to run around and chase stuff. You just need a shape once you've got that thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really, really good. And now I'm going to jump again.
Sure.
So I'm really interested to hear about what it was like for you going to Serbia and working on Extinction. And okay. No, I'm just.
I can tell you all about it. It was wild. And I thought I'd be going to Serbia.
Yeah. So, it's to me, it sounds like one of those just, I don't know, sort of almost like one of those once in a lifetime things to go and work on a fairly high budget film with fortunately someone that you know pretty well as well, and also being able to pick up a bunch of stuff. I'm guessing. I don't know. I mean, I don't. That's why I'm sort of asking you what it was like to go and work on it. I think it was that 100 million.
No, I kind of want 20 million. But the thing is, when you take 20 million to serve.
Man, you're freezing up. We've frozen up again. I'm just going to keep talking for a little bit while you unfreeze. So you're back. That's good. Like I said, I noticed I said 100 million because I was like, you've got to kind of have a bit of respect for those kind of figures. But 20 million as well is, and like you say, it goes a lot further in places where, I guess capitalism isn't as entrenched as it is in most other places, and you can do a lot more with your money. But still, these are numbers. I don't know.
It's numbers that you're not familiar with.
Yes, I've never had 20 million in my bank account and going, oh yeah, I totally get what that buys because I had it and I spent it. But these are big numbers. They're big numbers, and it just must be a fascinating world to be in.
Yeah. So there was it was massively educational for me. And just
no doubt
being a filmmaker from Perth, obviously those opportunities are just so rare. So it was so fortunate. I was in a program called the Feature Navigator program that Screen West runs, where they basically select who they think is most likely going to make a feature film. And part of that is they try and help get people attachments. And so I just happened to be in the right slot as the person who would get funded to do an attachment the moment that attachment opportunity came up. So it was just, you know, you could say that's luck, but also I busted my guts to get that grant.
Before we go any further, just got to say kudos to the government for providing those kind of opportunities for people, because I think it's very rare and there's not really enough of it. And, you know, but also I think it's good to appreciate that the government doesn't do nothing, you know.
Oh, no. And it's an investment. I mean, by helping these people, I mean, the reason why Ben was in that position to direct that movie was because his previous film was supported by the government.
Yeah.
And off the back of that, you know, you have people bringing international projects and money back into Western Australia as a result. And so I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is the arts is so good for the economy. It's incredibly good for the economy, and the fact that the government has opportunities to invest in artists, you know, I couldn't have afforded to have gone there and just stayed it wasn't part of my schedule to just stop working at my job for 3 months and go to Europe.
Yeah.
So to have that support was a game changer in my career. And so for me, I also recognized that, and it was really important that when I came back to Perth, I shared that knowledge with my friends, what I'd learned, because I felt like, you know, the government has given me this opportunity and spent money. So I don't want to just hold that to myself. I want to share that amongst people in WA. So I guess I'll tell you some of the stuff that I obviously learned while I was there.
Before you do, I'm gonna play devil's advocate just a little bit.
Yeah.
They chose you. They chose you to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a thing. That's a thing that you need to take into you, you know. They didn't choose someone else. They chose you. You were obviously of the caliber that they respected enough to choose you. So take that with you in your life's journey and have it as hey, you know what? They chose me. They chose me. I'm not an idiot, you know. It's not like I don't know what I'm doing, you know. And here's some evidence. If you want some evidence, and if you need some evidence to say, hey, I know what I'm doing, you know, take that. That's just me giving something to you.
That's good to hear. It's good to hear. I'll rewatch that part of this podcast.
Yeah, because but seriously, like take that, man, because they chose you. You know, they chose you to do that. So not, you know, it's great that you're helping other people, but also, you know, they respected you enough and your efforts and what you've done, and they saw something in you, right? That's obviously there. They wouldn't have made that investment if they didn't think it was worth it. So I'm just saying, just take that with you.
Oh no, it's a huge. It was a big moment where I was sort of just been grinding on so many scripts, and I was just trying to make stuff happen, and then to have that, I remember when they rang me up and said, "Do you want to go to Serbia next?" It was like literally, you got to go kind of thing, and it was like,
yep.
how did this happen? But it's also like, you know what? It happened because every morning I get up and I try and write movies. And so it was a really good, but you know, it felt good to realize that all that every day I was like, fuck, this is what am I doing? That it was actually, this is what I was doing. I was on a journey.
You know, something went your way, man. And I mean, you know, if you put enough effort into something, things start happening like that.
It's a war of attrition.
Yeah, and but it went your way, you know, and they chose you, and they saw something in you that they wanted to develop, you know, and so from that perspective, let's go into, you went to Serbia. What was that like, man?
Well, I'd never been to Europe before.
Yeah.
So it was like a great introduction to that part of the world. Look, it was wild. I got there to the airport, caught a taxi to the hotel, and then I messaged Ben. And I was like, hey, man, like, I'm here. And he's
here
like,
we are,
I'm in
Serbia.
let's have dinner at the restaurant and have a beer. And we just kind of hugged, and I'm just like, what the hell is, like, it was so
Mm.
bizarre. And it was obviously surreal for him. I mean, he's directing a Hollywood movie.
Yeah.
So the experience was unbelievable and probably very different to how attachments work here. Because generally when you're a director's attachment, say in WA, like if I had an attachment on my feature, I'd want my attachment working because it's another set of hands that can be supporting because there's so much little money. I had no responsibility on that film because they don't know who I am, what I'm doing. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm not employed. I am to sit next to Ben, which was the best thing in the world because, of course, I was just like a person just picking back, going around to all the meetings. And I had a chair in his office and I'd go into these production meetings. At the director's monitor of the whole movie, I had a chair next to him, and I just got to watch the whole movie get made, and I got to listen to the conversations that he was having with the cinematographer and the first AD. And so I got the experience of riding shotgun on how does someone navigate. What happens if you actually make an indie film and you blow up? What does it look like? And I got to watch that shotgun without responsibility and learn. And one of the biggest things I learned was filmmaking is filmmaking everywhere. Even though there's more explosions and there's hundreds of extras costumed, what's happening on set isn't any different to what's happening in Perth. Did you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that was really big revelation for me because I, going in, was like expecting to walk on a set and not recognize anything. What the hell is everything and what are people going to be saying? Because this is a Hollywood DOP and it was just the same thing. I mean, obviously, everyone was really talented, but it was a huge confidence boost to me because I was like, okay, I actually understand these conversations that are happening. I'm not like an idiot. And then watching the things that Ben had to navigate on that kind of level of film and how it's different, and it was almost like a giant TV commercial, and recognizing that, it's a lot of other people's money with a lot of other people who have input. And to Ben's credit, he was very intelligent. That he knew which battles to pick, not to pick. And you can totally see how a younger director who maybe makes a feature film when they're really young gets in that position, probably would argue and complain about everything. And he just was in the right headspace, understood exactly what he was doing, and has just benefited tremendously. But that also was a learning point. What actually is this movie? Who's it for? How does it work? And how do you hold your voice and your authenticity in a machine that you haven't created and aren't necessarily in control of?
One thing that really struck me when I had Ben on the show was that he had a really, really good outlook on, or a good grasp, I think, of the reality of the situation. And whilst there were things that frustrated him, he did seem to have a really good sense of, like you say, being able to choose which battles to pick, and how he conducted himself. I think it was, I really respected it, and I really respect the choices that he made, and the way that he made those choices seemed to be very mature. That can come off as sounding a bit glib, but he has a maturity as a director that is going to stand him in great stead making more movies, and I think that experience of making that movie and the choices the choices that he made whilst doing that, I think I was kind of in awe a little on it, because I think if I'd been in a similar situation, I may have been a bit more hard-headed about things, but he seemed to be very level-headed and very, understanding the situation and knowing what was going on and doing a really great job getting it done, and getting it done and kind of respecting all the people in between, like doing a job and doing the job well. If you understand what I mean,
Absolutely. No, it was really good, and like Ben killed it. And I mean, whether people like the film or don't like the film is not really important, because for his career, he walks away with insane connections, a lot of respect from really significant people.
Yeah.
And he's now writing movies and doing much bigger. You know, he's all the better for at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's because of how he handled that situation, which, in the hands of probably the wrong person, they could have, fallen apart.
Okay,
but I mean, in terms of education, I got to just speak to all these people.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad we got back to you because that bit was about Ben. But I'm really interested.
Yeah.
So part of that walking around and being involved and being, having the eyes and ears of really the director, for the access to those things.
Yeah.
What did you pick up? Were you picking up editing tips? Were you picking up, I haven't thought of putting the camera there, or he's used that kind of filter or those kind of things like with DOPs
I think
and
for
stuff?
For me, I was kind of, I had a game plan going in. So my game plan was I'm going to be invisible at the start so that people realize I'm not, because I'm basically, I'm no benefit to this film.
Yeah, you're there,
an extra chair and a person in the way.
Yeah.
Right? So I've got to basically prove to these people that it's not a pain for me to be there. So anytime I could just politely help someone, but not try and be a crew member, just, and then after a while I realized if I, do that and I'm here for 8 or 10 weeks, I'm going to eventually go to the bar with Ben. I'm going to form relationships with these people. Once I had relationships with these people, and Ben might be in a meeting about something that I don't need to be at, or he's having a private conversation with a producer and I'm not invited to that meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got an hour or two. I'm just going to wander off to the DOP's office and just sit down and ask him all this shit. And I just started going around and picking people's brains when I realized I could do that and there was a time, and I'd walk into but I became really good friends with the production designer, and he was the art director for Harry Potter, and I just go in there and I just started asking him questions about my film, and how, if you're going to do this thing, what would you do? And we'll go up to the makeup artist, who is the kindest. They're all such kind people. And then I became really good friends on set, because there'd be the monitor where Ben was, but then behind him, the DOP wasn't camera operating. He had his own DIT thing, and he had his mate that he brought over, Rodrigo, and they were just sitting there color grading and creating the images and really mapping all those, all the grade, so that they were basically implanting, obviously, in the filmmaker's mind what it was going to be early on. And I would sit with them and listen to because I'm really fascinated by cinematography and lighting, and listening to the choices that they were making. And I became really good friends with Rodrigo. And what happened was, I'll tell you, it's quite a funny story, is after I made my short film, I sent him a message on Instagram and I said, hey, look, I know I can never afford you, but I could maybe scrounge together $1,000. I'd love for you if you had any opportunity to color grade my short film.
Yeah, right.
And then he just said, man, we've all been there. I was there back in the day, with my friends. You don't have to pay me. I'll just do it.
Wow.
And so that experience of having him color grade that short film, it was just unbelievable. And he was on some huge TV series, and he was like, hey, I think it was the producers of Game of Thrones. He's like, hey, it's snowing. Just send me the rushes and I'll just use setup and start grading your short.
Wow.
But what I learned from that was he wasn't as interested in terms of what me and the DOP were thinking in terms of look. He said, let me watch your cut, and then I'll pitch back to you what I think the story and the feeling is. And a lot of it was actually talking about the mood and the tone in words before we even got to the look. And he wanted to understand what I was trying to do. And it wasn't about showing off in the grade. It was about supporting the story.
Wow.
And the choices that he made in the grade weren't about making it the best pictures. It was about making the dirty and inside the house. And it just, that was such a big learning experience of having that person who was confident in their own ability to make choices to support the story, not to go, I need to do this thing because I'll look good for my next job. And that was really cool. So that's one crazy byproduct. That didn't really answer your question, but I just thought about that then.
No, that's fine.
And I mean, I think with Ben, it was really about watching him at the monitor going, you know, Ben hadn't directed scenes which had 300 extras and explosions and crazy things, and me just going like, in my mind, I was like, I don't know what the hell you do to direct that. Like, where's the alien ship come from in these movies, and like, how does the effects work? Like, I'm not like Ant, who has a VFX background, and Ben isn't really like that either. And so, watching how Ben navigated his way through scenes, we talk about muscle memory, but there is no muscle memory for that stuff. It's all new. So watching how Ben was able to go, you know what's the story of the scene?
Yeah.
What are the people trying to do?
Yeah.
And actually breaking it down to its essence, and then you actually have these VFX guys who are able to support you. You know, you don't have to know how any of this shit works, how it comes. It's about going, what is the story? And watching Ben sort of grow in confidence, directing these crazy big epic moments once that happened. And then it kind of made me learn about, okay, well, that's how you direct Star Wars.
Yeah.
You don't go on Star Wars knowing, all right, I need 30 TIE fighters over there to fly under the camera.
Yeah.
It's I need this person to be feeling pressure.
That's a really interesting thing, and it comes up to the idea of I've heard actors talking about things that they've done, and they're like, how am I going to be in this scene? And I've heard it boiled down by some pretty serious actors that what am I doing here? Like, so what do I have to do? So this is my job. My job is I walk into the room, I say this line, and I go over there and I do this, and it's because of this, and that's what I'm doing. Yeah. And that's the same kind of thing as what you're talking about, but on a larger scale from the director's point of view of what's happening in the story. So we just do that. It's like
I've got to run to that drain in the street to get to cover, so I don't get bombed by alien ships.
Yeah, that's it, exactly.
Survive and protect my family.
Exactly, and Ben's job is to shoot that and to have them do that the way that he wants it done, and for the right look for that scene, and it's kind of like you can overthink it. You
Absolutely.
can overthink it, yeah. And
so it was a big demystification for me.
Yeah, and that's great, isn't it? Isn't that a good thing?
Well, it's great in terms of, like, I walked away going, I could do this.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if someone had called me up prior to being on that shoot and said, hey, come in, I would have been like sweating bullets, going, I have no idea what it's going to do. And now if someone asks me to do something like that, I know what this is. It's filmmaking. I know filmmaking.
Yeah.
There's choices that I've got to make to protect the integrity of the story, and that's what I'm doing.
So money well spent, Australian government,
Yeah.
So it should be more of it, because look, what it's done for you. And I guess maybe, I don't know if the people in the government have an understanding of how that all works, but what it's done for you has been invaluable, really. It's pulling back the
20 million times the money they spent.
Yeah, and that's a great thing. That's really, really good, and that's what I guess collectively, artistically, people who are artistic hope that the government's going to do. Is going to provide those opportunities with this result. Where the result is that you walk away going, I can do it. I can do it. And I guess maybe that was their intention, but
absolutely. And how do you elevate talent and give them opportunities, learning opportunities that are unique that you can't get here?
Yeah. It's
how do we give you a master's degree that you could never possibly get for a fraction of the price?
Yeah, and for what it sounds like is really invaluable experience. Just absolutely. Wonderful stuff.
And I still speak to all those crew still now.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous. I mean, I don't know those people, and I'm never going to be in a position where I do know them. But it's such a wonderful thing to have that experience and to be able to be with someone like Ben. And I've got a lot of respect for Ben. I think he conducts himself in a really, really don't know how to say it, but I just think like he's just a good man. He's just like a good guy. But to be around those people and to even the people that you worked with who, in their fields are levels above, if you're going to talk about levels like where Ben might be, but experience-wise, at least anyway. But to be in that environment where you get to experience those people, and then to experience them that they're people. They're people.
Well, that was great. I mean, they were so lovely, and you think like if any people could have an ego, it'd be people who are like doing Dark Knight and Harry Potter, and they could just like. I was looking them up on IMDb to see what they had done, and then occasionally they would say, "Oh, when I was doing this thing with I can't remember the name of the actress who played Hermione. We're doing this thing, blah blah blah, and I grew up with her doing." And you're just thinking that's insane, but they're not. They're just telling you a story of being on set, and they're so supportive, and they're so caring because they don't need an ego because they're just people who love filmmaking and like working with nice people. And to me, that was I used to be quite intimidated by someone's CV, but you just like half the time I was hanging out with them, just talking about like, family stuff or life stuff and not even filmmaking. People are everywhere. And that gave me a lot of confidence to feel like, well, I can just talk to anyone. And if I don't get along with people and they've got a big CV, well, then I probably wouldn't want to work with them anyway.
Yeah. And they've all got equally interesting stories, of their, how they got to where they are, and like you having a passion for it, and then then they, this happens and that happens, and they did this and they did that, and then these things happen for them, and it's just great. And I love hearing those stories. And so I'm going to wind it up here, and I'm going to say thanks, man. I think we've nearly kicked 2 hours. I think probably this will be 2 hours when it comes out. But it's been great, and I could probably do an easy another hour probably. I think
it's been really enjoyable. I feel like while we've been talking about filmmaking, I think what we've been really talking about is trying to unlock parts of life and what we're doing and what it meant.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of I hope anyway with my podcast is like I was saying to you yesterday, it's about getting to know the person, and getting to know people and things about life, what's true about life and things that we enjoy, and the processes that we take to become good at what we do, or follow our dreams, or make artistic things, and to enjoy them and to be better at them, And I love that, and I love the stories. I love them all, and I hope I can get many, many more people who have great stories as well. But I love your story, man, and it's good luck with the film, man. The feature.
Fingers crossed.
Well, man,
next year.
I think I really, I feel really positive about it. The short was, like I said to you when I saw it, the first thing I said to you was, "That's a great idea." It's a great idea that, that storyline. It just is so much potential in it. It's just so much rich human ideas and experiences that. And things to explore. There's so much in it to explore. I feel, that there's
Frozen.
Frozen, bummer.
You're back.
Yep. Okay. There's so much to explore in that film and that idea, and I'm really excited to see what comes from it.
To jump into the discomfort.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too, isn't it? I mean, like we were saying, it's that there is that element of being. You've got to make yourself uncomfortable to
when the private becomes public.
Yeah, and like chasing that authenticity and all those kind of things that is going to make it that thing.
Being brave. Got to be brave. You just got to do it.
Yeah. Well,
walk into the fire. And, you'll get burnt, but you'll get some results.
Well, you might be the phoenix that rise from the ashes, Sorry, cliche. Yeah,
yeah. So thanks for for the opportunity to talk about, and I'm wanting to spend 2 hours talking about art with me. I really enjoyed it.
It's been awesome.
I think it's good to always hash these things out, and important to sort of go, well, wait, why am I doing this? Why am I getting up? Sometimes you just get lost in the machine. I've got to do this edit. I've got to do this thing, and it becomes to the Tuesday's edit thing, and then Wednesday I've got to do this script. And sometimes it's good to just stop and go, hang on, what does this mean, and why am I doing it? And what is the bigger picture, and to actually have a conversation about it. So I think that's been a really valuable thing today.
Yeah, absolutely. And right, so I always end this, right? And then normally the people that I end it with hang up. And so don't hang up, right? Because after I do it, I like to have a chat afterwards as well. So we're going to end it here. And so for those in the know and those who are not in the know, this has been DVS, or David Vincent Smith. And watch this space.
Thanks, Mum, for that name.
Yeah. Watch this space for, up and coming events that are going to be, I believe, really, really good. I'm sure that all the things that have happened up until now are going to set you in really good stead for making this feature. And I think, I really hope anyway that for you that there's going to be some really, really good things in the future too. And it's been just a great podcast, man. I've really, really enjoyed it. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, it's been really, really cool. So thanks again, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Worries.
And this is us signing out, and we'll catch you.
Yes.